All right, as we've been discussing 2 days ago, the Biden administration engaged in a prisoner swap with Russia. Now, by now, most of us are familiar with the American WNBA player Brittany Griner, arrested for carrying a marijuana concentrate in her luggage. The Russian she was swapped for, Victor Bout, was guilty of much more serious crimes. For almost two decades, Victor Bout was the world's most infamous arms dealer, going by the nicknames the Merchant of Death and Sanctions Buster. He sold arms to Hezbollah, Liberia's Charles Taylor, the Congo, the Colombian terrorist group FARC, Muammar Gaddafi, the Taliban, and so on. The internet having a little bit of fun with this, as you can see, but it's no laughing matter. He is a supplier of terrorists who was complicit in thousands of deaths worldwide, including hundreds of Americans. Joining us to discuss and the reaction to this, counterterrorism and foreign policy expert, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, and senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation and former deputy national security advisor, Victoria Coates. Victoria, thank you both for being here. Victoria, I'm going to come to you first. This guy was really one of the worst of the worst. Do those who we release in this way typically, based on our own tracking of their activities after their release from prison, do they tend to go back to their former life of terror?
Well, of course they do. And it's good to be with you, Tom, and great to be with you as well, Lisa. This is an absolutely confounding decision by the Biden administration because of what Chuck just reported from Kiev. We're giving hundreds of millions of more. We're bumping up against $100 billion of aid to Ukraine. And this guy, who is a former KGB agent, a crony of Vladimir Putin's, is just going to be used now as Putin's procurement officer for Ukraine. It is undermining their key policy priority right now, which is to get this war wrapped up on favorable terms to Kiev and Washington. But now they're putting one of Putin's most powerful players back on the board. It just makes no sense.
Lisa, this seems like part of a troubling pattern of behavior in these Democrat administrations. In 2014, President Obama traded Bo Bergdahl for 5 Taliban fighters who were held at Gitmo. So by definition, they were very high-value detainees. What message does this send to Iran and also the terror groups that many of whom got weapons from Victor Bout?
Exactly, and that's probably the most important issue here, is that what kind of precedent does this send? When we say that we don't negotiate with terrorists, what's the difference between, the Taliban or Hezbollah and now Iran's regime, who we do negotiate with, or now here letting someone of this high value, as Victoria said, he's a pivotal player in getting Russia that leg up that it needs in this war. So it doesn't send a good message to our enemies. The foreign policy of the Biden administration has been very dangerous. We look at the alliances made on the global stage, and they will all come back to haunt us. If not now, they will have very serious reverberations down the line. And as you said, in terms of what this looks like in front of the Iran regime, China, Venezuela, North Korea, and the list goes on.
Yeah, speaking, Victoria, of the Middle East and Iran and China currently, Xi Jinping he's been doing sort of his charm offensive in the Middle East. He's at a summit in Saudi Arabia, was warmly received by Mohammed bin Salman. There was a lot of pomp and circumstance for the Chinese leader's visit there, pledging more security deals with Gulf producers, promising to buy more crude and start paying for it in Chinese currency. China clearly taking advantage of U.S. disengagement in the region. Your reaction to Xi Jinping's visit over there this week?
Tom, I actually have a slightly different take on it. I'm all for the Gulf selling China fully priced, licit energy as much as they would like to, and maybe he'll stop buying illicit, discounted Russian energy, and thereby basically acting as Putin's banker for the Ukraine war. So now that we're not a major importer from the Gulf, they need other customers. That's fine. But I think the message needs to be very clear from everyone who values these relationships that cooperation in technology and security fields is really off the table if our Gulf partners and allies want to maintain their relationships with the United States in those spheres. And, Xi is certainly not going to be able to come defend Saudi Arabia from Houthi missiles out of Yemen or even direct fire out of Iran. But we can. We've got obviously major naval and Air Force assets in the region. And I think that relationship has to be very clearly spelled out. That we have no objection to commercial traffic transactions with China, but that security and technology are our sphere of influence.
Lisa, China getting closer to Saudi and the UAE as our relationship there really craters with some of these countries. What are you hearing from your sources in the region about Xi's visit?
It's they're both nations are equal opportunists, just looking to increase their sphere of influence. In the case of Saudi Arabia, of course, just trying to expand its economy, and the same for China. There's a short list of trading partners that they can have, and of course, they have agreed on a strategic partnership just based on oil sales and security, but not to interfere in internal affairs in respective countries. It's interesting to me when you look at the Biden administration stopping short of fully engaging with the Saudis because of human rights, right? And then you look at the hypocrisy of wanting to negotiate with a country like Iran's regime when they are showing us at this very moment that they are the most brutal and barbaric in terms of human rights. And interestingly enough, today is Human Rights Day. We had a statement from Secretary Blinken last night on the eve of Human Rights Day, and he only mentioned human rights abuses by the Russians in Ukraine, did not make any mention of the Iran revolution going on right now, and the human rights abuses on the global stage. So, the view of this is that Washington picks and chooses what they want to do in terms of foreign policy, but it is increasingly damaging to our overall foreign policy, as we can see in this case.
Yeah, and of course, all the American companies who turn the other cheek when they're doing business with communist China, and communist China has killed 60 million of its own people. Victoria, I can't let you go. I've just got a few seconds left, but I can't let you go without asking about the revelations that perhaps the FBI and the intel community were part of a cabal to forcibly suppress speech and dissent through Twitter on a mass scale. Obviously, there are more revelations came out last night. We're expecting more today. Your response?
It really is shocking, Tom. And I mean, as the United States, free speech is our brand. It's what we stand for. And I think, mentioning China, we have the verdict against Jimmy Lai today, the media mogul who is being basically prosecuted to death in communist China and silenced. And I mean, all credit to Elon Musk for opening up this information, for standing for free speech. I mean, that's absolutely what we have to do as a nation. And so hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this. Hopefully Twitter, which I love and Lisa loves, and we want this to be a pure and open vehicle, but that this degree of corruption and suppression of speech happened in our own country is something we have to take very, very seriously.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Lisa Daftari and Victoria Coates, thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate you both.